I leave the floor to Mrs. Brownstone, as you all know her. With Viso, she's the engine and the heart and the brain of this entire operation.
Go on. Thank you very much. I really hope that you think it's worth sitting down to listen to the survey and the results we have for this year's report. We have just finalized the report, and as you can see, it's reflecting Rome, very heavy stone pillars, and that is what we are doing with this survey. We have a few more reports if you would like to have this one. Otherwise, of course, it will be published also on the website, so you can have all the information there. We will make a very brief introduction and give you some highlights, and I would like to share this together with some of the colleagues in the working group. We will not go, of course, through the whole survey. And first of all, I would like to say thank you very much for all of you that have given us a lot of information and answering the questions. And this is a 3-year project that is now ending, and I will come back to the next step later. But we are a lot of people that have been working together now, and here you see the working group. What is really new for this last year is also that we have had Hayley Clark from Canada representing IACA in the working group, and we have also managed to have Lata Kunjapa from Singapore in the working group. So we are really becoming what we now call the International Business Registers Report. And this is us. It's our information, our data, and it's us. We have answered the questions. So we know exactly who's behind it, and we can go back and we can ask you more questions. And I also think that if we are really serious when we say that we would like to learn more, we would like to benchmark. I'm not really sure I will say that you're serious if you haven't read the report next time I see you, because this is really a fundament for this information. And also, if you have opinions, if you have questions, if you have anything that you will try to put in for the next year, then just get back to us and we will try to include it if it makes sense. As I said, this is the end of a 3-year project, but the survey itself has been there since 2002. But the last 3 years, and I would say maybe the last 2 years, have been really, really great. And this year I also will say a special thank you for UK, because UK has been working and giving a lot of support for designing the report also. And it helps us a lot when we are reading it. We have also started what we call the definitions group, and I'm really happy, David, to see that you put that on your slide. And we can also see now that the information in the survey is used in reports. People are referring back to it. And when we made the presentation at the ECRF meeting in Rio, our colleague Luz Marina Rincon from Colombia, she told all of us how much she has used the information in the survey and what you can do with it. And she said the same thing. The first time I didn't even read it, and the next year I read it, and I could use it a lot. This year, we had sent the survey to 112 different jurisdictions, and we have 73 answers, which means that we have a response rate for about 65%. if we compare that to last year, we sent it to 102 jurisdictions, but we then had 72 replies. Before we started the project 3 years ago, I said my goal is that we will have 50 respondents, and now we have 73. So the next step, of course, 100. And that's a challenge. We need your answer, otherwise it's not even possible for us to do the survey. You can also see here that we need more countries, especially from Africa and Middle East, to be able to compare. We also need you to be there. If you answer the survey 1 year, we also need you to be there for the next year, because if we would like to see trends, if we would like to see what is happening over the years, if we lack you for 1 year, we have to start all over again. And of course, if you go back now and see some results from last year, it might not really fit into this year, because some countries, unfortunately, are lost again, and there are a lot of new ones, especially from IACA, which also means that it's affecting the results. So bear that in mind when you will listen to some of the results in the report, and then we'll get back to what is happening in the future. So please, Stacey.
Thanks, Annika. So I'm just going to run through some highlights of the report. So as with last year, it was divided into 5 chapters. The first one being legal and institutional settings. Then we have processing time, e-services, funding and fees, and business dynamics. This year we've also had 3 case studies from Jersey, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And we've added some snapshots to the appendix of the report, just to give you some quick information about each of the jurisdictions that has taken part. So this first chapter, legal and institutional settings, the reason that is the first chapter is because it's fundamental. It gives you the context for the way that all of the respondents operate. We've seen lots of presentations, and I've spoken to lots of people about how different we all are, and I think we just really need to bear that in mind when we compare how everyone kind of operates, really. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the results from this chapter. The first one is just, so who operates the business register? And as you can see, the vast majority are run by the government. But there are some differences. There is a little bit more variance in the Americas. And in fact, Brazil indicated that, and Colombia indicated that their registries are run by a chamber of commerce. Europe is the most diverse. And in fact, 3% indicated that they were operated in some other unspecified way. So I think we need to explore that a little bit more. The next one is around the structure of business registers. So all this really means is, are you structured centrally? Do you have a central operation, or are you decentralized? And if you are decentralized, you have autonomous or non-autonomous offices. So what we can see here is most are organized centrally. And this is most common in the Americas, but we can see that in all regions there are some elements of decentralization. So the next chapter is processing time. Kind of does what it says on the tin, really. We look at mainly the time to process applications for formation of entities and for changes to the company's register. And the reason that we look at this is because, lots of us, if not all of us, measure processing time. And it's kind of seen as, it indicates the ability to deliver efficient services and meet customer demand if you have faster processing times. Because, at the end of the day, what that does is allows your registered entities to do what they want to do, which is to do business and not spend time transacting with government. or whoever runs the organization. So what we find is an important element to consider when we look at processing time is mandatory pre-registration activities. This is quite common in a lot of organizations, and we need to kind of bear this in mind when we look at how long it takes organizations to register certain transactions. So the different categories that we have are name reservation, legal permits, bank certificates, and notary publics. And we can see that in Europe, and we've kind of seen this in a few of the presentations, notary publics are very common. But, you know, there's a fairly kind of even spread across the board, but in the Americas, they are most likely to not have any pre-registration activities required at all. So this next slide looks at, it compares processing time for incorporation, which is the horizontal axis, with time to process changes, which is the vertical axis on the graph. The time's shown in hours, because now there are so many organizations that, you know, they process applications in hours, so that's the most kind of useful way to measure it. What we've shown here is just a pattern and the correlation rather than showing individual jurisdictions. But if you do want to see how those perform, as I said, we have some snapshots in the report which you can take a look at. With a few exceptions, in most cases, there is a clear correlation between the time taken to process incorporations and the time taken to process changes. Reasons might vary, but it may be that regulations and procedures around these types of registrations kind of are fairly similar, so there's a kind of correlation. What this graph does is to take the first quadrant of the previous graph, so the fastest performers, because as the previous slide showed, most jurisdictions congregate in the bottom left-hand corner of that graph, which means that they have a processing time of less than 20 hours for changes and less than 17 hours for incorporations. And in fact, the majority of organizations shown in this graph actually handle applications for within 8 hours. And here there's an even stronger correlation when you compare the time to incorporate and the time to process changes. And again, if you want to see any kind of individual jurisdictions, then please do take a look at the report. So the last chapter I'm going to talk to you about is e-services. Now this, I think, remains an important topic for discussion. E-services are often a key enabler to drive costs down, speed up processes, and to also combat fraud. And what we also find is they're often used to provide joined-up services with other parts of government. So this first graph shows the accepted forms of company registration. Now, it's important to say that this just shows how it's possible to accept applications, not the actual take-up of the services. It's interesting because paper is still the most widely available method of accepting applications, but electronic is becoming more prevalent. And in particular, if we compare with last year's results, the acceptance of images is decreasing and internet and data is increasing. This next one shows whether it's possible to complete the entire entity formation process electronically. So what we've done here is to actually split the formation process at a more kind of granular level. So we look at whether the filling out of information, signature, payment, and the issuance of an incorporation or a formation certificate can all be done electronically. And if it can, then we consider that to be the complete process electronic. And I think this is really a key one because it's important in the ease of starting a business. It should follow that the more electronic a process is, the more streamlined it is, less manual, and obviously, as I talked about earlier, joined up services. There are many organisations that do this. Common are taxes and licensing authorities. And for example, South Africa have automated a number of services, and they've integrated the opening of bank accounts with company registration. This next graph shows the percentage of electronically submitted documents for formation and changes. Now, we actually changed the question that this graph is based on this year, so we've actually got a different result. In previous years, there's been a kind of a common trend. What we did this year was try to kind of as with the formation process, we tried to break it down into whether electronic documents are sent as internet, data, or image. What we've done here is showed a consolidated picture, but as you can see, there's no clear pattern. And I think we do need to kind of look a little bit more into this. So I would just urge you to be cautious when you interpret this graph. And I think we've just got a little bit more work to do to explore this. So the last graph I'm going to show you is where there are mandatory e-services, still very much in the minority. Out of the 71 registries that responded to this question, only 7 indicated that e-services are mandatory. And this doesn't apply to all entity types, and you can see there it's split up for you in the graph. So really, I mean, this just serves as a useful reference, perhaps for any jurisdictions that are thinking of implementing mandatory e-services, because ultimately, providing the opportunity for knowledge sharing is really, you know, the raison d'etre for this report, really, and to share best practice. So thanks for your attention. I'll now pass you on to my colleague, Magdalena, and she's going to take you through the final 2 chapters.
So, hi, I'm Magdalena, and I'm going to talk to you about the last 2 chapters of the report. One important aspect when comparing registers is the source of funding and the fees collected by the different registers. In this year's survey, about 51% of the business register answered that they were primarily funded through customers' fees. And this is a slight change from last year, but as Annika said, we have had a little bit of change in the respondents, which could explain parts of the change in the results. On a regional basis, the pattern is that in Europe, 55% of the registers are funded governmentally. In Africa and Middle East, 67% is governmentally funded. In Asia and the Pacific, 30% is funded governmentally, and in the Americas, 43% are funded governmentally. In Europe, one thing that changed this year is that in the Netherlands, the Chamber of Commerce became funded through government rather than through customer fees, so that is one change in the data. Also for the Americas, we can see a different pattern this year compared to last year, but it's because we have a lot of new respondents from the Americas, and several of the new ones has a different funding than the respondents from last year. When looking at the fees collected by the different registers, we can see that fees for formation is very common. Also, fees for changes and for information is really common. And 64% of the registers say that they have some of the services free of charge. In Europe, 2 of the respondents, Kosovo and Slovenia, they've indicated that all their services are free of charge, so they're not charging for anything. We're also looking at the average incorporation prices in the report. In this figure, you can see the average incorporation price per region, and for each individual region, the first ones are governmentally funded, and the second is funded through customer fees. Is that right? We can see that the average formation price varies a lot between the registers. Some have 0 price for incorporation, and others charge as much as, on average, 3,280 euro. This year, the average cost for formation for all entity types for all the 4 regions was 193 euro for registers funded by customer fees. And the average cost for formation for governmentally funded registers was 140 euro. So there's a gap in the average price of 47 euro. And we have to remember that in Dubai, the average formation fee for all entity types is 3,280 euro. They have a price for incorporation, a public or private limited company, of 7,400 euro. So there's a big difference between registers. The last chapter of the report is a chapter on business dynamics. This was added as an attempt to measure the business climate in the regions. So here we are looking at business dynamics through terminations and incorporations in the registers. Here we have a percentage of terminations in company registers on the vertical axis, the horizontal axis. And then we have the percentage of new company registration on the vertical axis. So what we're looking at here is a comparison between the percentage of terminations and the percentage of new registrations. And the jurisdictions in the upper right corner, they are symbolized by a high number of new company formations and a high number of terminations. So these are considered to be the most dynamic jurisdictions, since it's implied that new companies replace old and unsuccessful companies. Some of the registers in this quadrant is Wisconsin, Singapore, and UK. In the upper left corner, new registration is high, and the percentage of termination is comparably low. These jurisdictions are also characterized as dynamic, but they're more of growing jurisdictions. Some of the registers in this quadrant are Australia, Lesotho. In the bottom left corner, we find jurisdictions that are more stable ones. They experience a small percentage of new registrations and a small percentage of terminations. And so this means that when a company leaves, it's almost always replaced by a new one. And the economy experiences a steady process. In the bottom right corner, we have jurisdictions that are characterized by a slower business dynamic. They tend to have more terminations than formations of new companies. And I forgot to say that in the bottom left corner, we find Norway and Sweden, for example. And in the bottom right corner, we find Liechtenstein and Gibraltar. And this figure shows the percentage of new registrations and terminations by region. And for Asia and the Pacific, if you think the percentage of termination is 9 on the bar there, it's not, it's 2. So just so you know it. In all regions, the number of new registrations is higher than the number of terminations. So this indicates a positive inflow across the board. Europe can be said to be the most stable region where terminations is replaced by new registrations. And both Africa, Middle East, and Asia Pacific are more characterized by a low number of termination and a higher number of new registration, meaning that they're growing regions. And in America, you can see that we have a high number of new registrations and also quite high number of terminations. As always, we have to be a bit cautious when looking at this data, because if the register has done something like cleaning out inactive companies or something, this could alter the results, even though we have questions about that and we try to take care of it. There could still be some remaining issues with that. Like Stacy said, we have a newcomer this year. We have included an appendix with snapshots for the registries. Here is an example for Singapore. We have chosen some of the questions and the answers given to those questions and tried to display it on a jurisdictional level so that you could more easily benchmark and compare. And we would be very happy if you could give us input on what to include here and how you want it performed. This is for the UK. And you can find your own jurisdiction in the appendix then. So, and that's the report, the 5 chapters of the report and the appendix. So we will, as Annika said, we will publish it soon, and you can have access to it. So I'm leaving the word to Celia.
So hello, my name is Celia Johnston. I'm from Germany, and I'm a member of the definitions group, and I'm going to give you some information about this group today. The group was established last year in 2013, and to this day we have 7 members. Those are the members of the group. As you can see, we are from different jurisdictions, so we bring different perspectives to the group. I'm going to tell you a bit about the purpose of the definitions group. As Annika already stated, the survey has grown. We have got more jurisdictions responding every year, and we hope to have even more jurisdictions to respond. As you can see, there's been like a big leap within the last 2 years. Hopefully, we'll have yet another next year. But we've come across some difficulties because of this leap, because of the number of responding jurisdictions, and especially which regions these jurisdictions are from, which has to do with the fact that when we're talking about legal terms, legal definitions, it seems that we don't always mean the same thing. And we thought we have to have some guidelines. We need some help when we're asking you the questions in the survey. We need to give you a reference guide so you know what we're actually asking of you, because there are several terms. We're focusing on 2 terms at the moment that I'm going to get into in a little bit. And yeah, so it's basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it easier to answer the survey. We're trying to make the report more valuable and more reliable, because the data hopefully will be even more accurate if people know what they're talking about. So we intend to create a terminology guide to accompany future surveys. Clicky thing. So, yeah, that was too far. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what's happened so far. As I said, we have two focal points at the moment. That's the limited liability companies and that are the branches. We had the impression that that was of the most importance at the moment. So we got together within our group. We had several face-to-face meetings. We've been in constant contact via email. We've had telephone conferences, and we came up with a template that we sent out to the jurisdictions to seek feedback. We wanted to know, what legal entities do you have? What legal entities do you register in your business register? And, well, what characteristics do these legal entities have? So we know, are we comparing like with like, or are we not? And do we maybe have to rephrase the questions in order to make it easier to respond, in order to make the responses more accurate? Apart from that, we also asked for the definition of the term branch, because we included questions regarding branch disclosure last year for the first time. Obviously, that is of big importance, but when we're talking about it, we need to know if we're referring to the same thing, or are we talking about totally different things. Okay. Yeah, so far, I mean, we've sent this template out several times now. 37 is actually not accurate. I think we have 40 responses now, so yay. We're getting there. So yeah. I need to update that. But we need more results. We want you all to participate, because this is not, well, of course it's for us as well, but it's for you. We're trying to make it easier for you. We're trying to make the report better, more valuable. Okay, so what we wanted to know, first of all, was what are we talking about when we're talking about the term branch? A lot of the responding jurisdictions did actually attempt at providing their own interpretation or definition of the term branch, but the primary commonality was that there is no definition for this term, or at least there is no standard definition for this term. And some of the definitions that we were provided with were very different, so we thought, okay, we're going to have to find a different attempt. So in a meeting, we thought, well, maybe we can come up with some characteristics that, in our opinion, do stand there for all. Well, that's our understanding of a branch, and hopefully it's yours as well. We'll have to find out and see. When we were at the conference in IACA, we were told that the term branch actually didn't mean that much to them there. They said they would, when they saw the characteristics that we'd put together, that they would refer to it as a foreign entity. And this is the kind of information that we need. We need you to tell us, look, we're not understanding this. We would call it such and such, so we know how to phrase the questions to get accurate answers. Okay, so the next focal point of our group are the limited liability companies. And that has to do with the fact that some jurisdictions differ between private and public limited companies, whereas others don't. They only have limited companies. And then in order to have accurate responses from the IACA members, we also included the US LLC. Okay, so this is where the reference guide hopefully is going to kick in sometime. We're going to have an extensive list of legal entities throughout all the responding jurisdictions. When you're struggling with a question like, I don't know, is this legal entity a limited liability company, or is it a public, or what is it? You can just go and look up in your reference guide and see, oh, okay, now I know which box to tick, and that is what we intend for you to do. So we're collecting all this data not for our own benefit, but for yours, and that's why we want to publish it on the organizational website, so you can look it up, you can find your reference guide, you can find your definitions there. Yeah, we were going to do that for free. Now I heard people are interested in it, so maybe we should not be offering this for free. I don't know, we have to talk about that. Yeah, okay, so anyway, this is us trying to make it easier for you. Okay, and if there are any terms, anything within the survey when you're working on it, let us know. Approach the group, tell us if there's a question you don't understand, if there's a term you don't understand, because that's how we'll make the report more reliable and valuable for all of us. Okay, that's it. Thank you.